The memory of the fresh, crisp, pine-scented air still feels tainted by what came next. I walked up the 3 worn wooden steps, the snow crunching under my boots, toward the front door of that isolated cabin. It was perfect on the outside, a picturesque holiday escape, exactly what the online photos promised. But the moment I stepped across the threshold, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. The house was cold in a way that had nothing to do with the outside temperature. There was a faint, unsettling smell I couldn't place, not quite mold, not quite clean, metallic and sterile, like old machinery left running in a basement. I kept telling myself it is just an old rental cabin, isolated and empty for the season, that is all. Mark, completely oblivious to my growing sense of unease, was already wrestling with the boxes and laughing about the lack of cell service. He was trying to get the cheap plastic festive lights plugged in, his mind firmly focused on the idea of a perfect, snowy escape in the middle of nowhere. I wandered into the living area, pulling off my gloves, and that is when I saw it. It was not hidden well at all. Behind the slightly dusty picture frame of a generic mountain scene, the glass was slightly fogged from the heat of something small and warm behind it. And there it was, a tiny, almost invisible red pinprick of light. A camera. The color was too faint to notice immediately, but once I saw it, I could not unsee it. My heart rate immediately spiked, a hollow, cold sound in my ears. I moved with a sudden, panicked urgency, scanning the room. The smoke detector on the ceiling had an extra, suspiciously dark lens nestled next to the test button. The small, digital clock on the mantel, right next to the guest book, had a third. They were everywhere, discreetly placed but clearly positioned to record our every move, a surgical, invasive violation of privacy. I felt a white-hot wave of fury and disgust wash over me. This was not just poor judgment from a landlord. This was deeply, personally unsettling. I dragged Mark away from his holiday cheer, his face turning instantly white with disbelief as I pointed out the various lenses blinking at us. We both felt the immediate urge to get out, but we had to confront this, to understand the why. We grabbed the rental agreement and called the number listed for the owner. A man named Mr. Silas answered on the second ring. His voice was a flat, unsettling monotone too calm for the situation. When we confronted him, he did not even try to deny it. He simply said, "They are standard security measures, nothing more, and they are essential for the property's insurance. Standard security does not point directly at the bed or the shower stall." We demanded he turn them off immediately, citing every privacy law we could think of. He chuckled, a dry, unsettling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Impossible," he said. "They are not linked to this property's local power grid or a normal Wi-Fi network." That is when the true, paralyzing panic hit me. If the cameras were not linked to the cabin's power, or the minimal cell service, or the non-existent Wi-Fi, where was the feed going? The sheer isolation of the location, surrounded by dense, snowy forest, made it impossible to comprehend. This was not a quick setup. This was professional, complex, and broadcasting somewhere else entirely. Mark, driven by a primal need for answers, noticed something I had missed. The small attic access door, poorly disguised with a coat of fresh, mismatched paint. He dragged a heavy armchair over and shoved the flimsy latch aside. The air that rushed down was thick, cold, and stale, smelling of dust and ozone. The only light was a single shaft filtering through a small, grimy window, and the air was filled with dancing motes of ancient dust. We found what felt like the heart of the operation. A locked, heavy metal box, bolted directly to the wooden floor joists. We spent a solid 10 minutes prying it open with the cast-iron fireplace poker, the wood splintering around the metal. Inside, the box was humming, full of commercial-grade networking equipment, small routers, stacks of hard drives, and the most frightening thing of all, a complex satellite uplink system. Everything was running hot and silently recording, broadcasting to the sky. This was not a rental property. It was a sophisticated remote surveillance hub. We pulled the plugs, ripping the cables out one by one, cutting the power to the entire system. A small, fleeting wave of relief washed over me, but it vanished instantly, replaced by a cold dread. I knew we had just done something irreversible. Comment what you would do right now. The moment the humming and the red lights went dead, the house went completely silent, but that silence was heavier, charged with an expectant, terrifying energy. We felt like we were holding our breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for Mr. Silas to call back and scream at us. The next day, the entire atmosphere of the cabin felt different. Every shadow seemed deeper. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like a footstep approaching the door. We kept expecting the police to show up, or maybe something far worse. We decided we had to leave, but before we could even pack our bags, we heard the sound. It was not a knock, not the sound of a vehicle approaching on the snowy driveway, but a deep, rhythmic thrumming, vibrating through the wooden floorboards right in the center of the room. It was not a pump, not a generator, and it was definitely coming from beneath the cabin. The sound was mechanical, powerful, and persistent. Mark, his face pale and drawn, remembered an odd lump under the rug in the corner of the dining area, near the back wall. We tore the rug aside, revealing a crudely cut trapdoor, sealed shut with 3 heavy-duty slide latches. He hesitated for a long moment, the fear visible in his wide eyes. I knew with absolute certainty that we should leave, just grab the hard drives, our wallets, and run back to the car. But the cold terror and the overwhelming curiosity held us captive, chaining us to the discovery. The rhythmic thrumming grew louder, a deep, unsettling heartbeat under our feet. He slowly undid the latches and opened the door. The smell that rushed up was overpowering, hitting us like a physical blow, ozone mixed with stale, dry earth, and the metallic scent I had noticed the day before, only 1,000 times stronger. It was the smell of a massive confined electrical system. Down the crude wooden ladder, partially hidden by cobwebs and shadows, we saw it. Not a cellar, but a massive concrete bunker, deep under the ground, hidden for what looked like decades. This was not about privacy or insurance. This was about something monumental, something the owner, Mr. Silas, likely did not even know was there. We descended carefully, our boots hitting the cold concrete floor. The air was dry and surprisingly cold. We found a small freestanding metal table, and on it a single flickering monitor screen powered by an internal battery. The screen was displaying a sequence of information, a scrolling list of coordinates, a date far in the past, and a cryptic message that made my blood run cold. It was only 3 words, but the weight of them was immense. It read, Project Chimera active. The realization hit us like a physical shockwave. That satellite system, those hundreds of cameras we had unplugged, they were not watching us. Not really. They were watching the world outside. We found the source of the thrumming in the far corner, a massive, obsolete-looking transmission tower, vibrating with dormant power. The hard drives we ripped out were now clutched tightly in my hands. Mark frantically plugged one into a small auxiliary port on the bunker's monitor. The files started scrolling instantly, millions of them, detailing the construction of this entire network, the financial paper trail, and the alleged security stays of high-ranking government officials, CEOs, and global figures. And then we saw the coordinates. They did not point to a military base or a hidden secret lab or another cabin. They pointed to a place I see every single day, right in my own city, a small, completely normal-looking office building downtown. The bunker had another purpose entirely, far beyond just storage. It was designed to transmit a high-powered signal that would effectively silence every single communication line on the planet, a complete, untraceable global blackout. Mark looked at me, his eyes wide and vacant, completely overwhelmed by the gravity of what we had found. "Who are the people listed in those files, and why were they here?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "And what the heck did we just turn off?" The silence was punctuated only by the low, constant hum of the emergency lights in the bunker, and Mark's terrified whisper echoing off the concrete walls. We were standing in the heart of a global intelligence network, an artifact of some long-forgotten massive conspiracy. I scrolled through the files on the screen, feeling an awful sickness in my stomach. The list of names was like a global who's who of power, people who control everything from world finances to critical infrastructure. The log entries were vague, cryptic notations of transfer complete, and data acquisition successful, with dates stretching back over 2 decades. They were not vacationing here. They were being monitored, or perhaps they were the ones doing the monitoring, using this cabin as an untraceable, off-grid command center. The coordinates we saw, the ones pointing to that mundane office building in my city, confirmed the first major twist. This whole operation was not about this remote place. It was about its target. This cabin was just the instrument, the dead man's switch. My city was the destination for the data, the final assembly point. I had walked past that building 1,000 times, never knowing it was connected to this silent, terrifying global observation web. It was the most shocking, destabilizing feeling in the world, knowing that something so big was being run right under the nose of my normal, everyday life. We were distracted by the files, the sheer volume of data, trying to piece together the pieces of a puzzle that was far too big for us. That is when Mark pointed to the control panel of the main transmission tower. The rhythmic thrumming, the sound that led us down here, had stopped the moment we unplugged everything in the attic. That was the second, terrifying twist. That thrumming was the main transmission power, and by cutting it we had initiated a complete fail-safe system. On a small ruggedized control panel, a digital timer was counting down. It was counting down from 5 minutes and 45 seconds. The realization hit Mark first, his mouth dropping open in a silent scream. That thrumming, he choked out. It wasn't a warning. It was the sound of the main power. We stopped it, and now the backup is kicking in. We were not victims of a pervert landlord or simple voyeurism. We were accidental saboteurs interrupting a worldwide operation run from a remote vacation cabin. The countdown was the backup power, the one designed to automatically reconnect the entire surveillance grid, send a massive, high-priority alert signal to every name on that list we had just read, and override the manual disconnection we had performed. It was the bunker's final defense mechanism. We had less than 5 minutes before the system went fully back online. And the final, most terrifying question echoed in my mind, freezing me in place. Is the person who built this bunker still alive, and are they coming back for us right now, knowing we have the data, the entirety of their work, in the hard drives I'm holding? We looked around the bunker frantically. There was no way to stop the timer. The controls were simple, designed for a one-time activation. We had to move. The only thing we could do was get out and use the remaining time to plan our next move. We had the evidence, the undeniable proof of Project Chimera, and they were about to realize we had it. We scrambled back up the crude wooden ladder, the smell of ozone clinging to our clothes, the countdown timer in the bunker ticking relentlessly towards 0. We slammed the trapdoor shut, threw the heavy rug back over it, and bolted across the room. We did not speak a single word. The panic had become a silent, focused terror. We grabbed our bags, not caring about the clothes or the holiday cheer, only securing the laptop and the stack of hard drives that contained the secret life of Project Chimera. The snowy escape had become a desperate flight. Within 3 minutes, we were back in the car, peeling out of the driveway, tires spinning on the packed snow. We did not stop to look back. We drove for an hour without saying a word, Mark's knuckles white on the steering wheel, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror. The silence of the car was deafening, but it was nothing compared to the silence of the forest we left behind. We finally pulled off the main highway and found a small, brightly lit gas station, the normalcy of the place in almost painful contrast to the reality we had just escaped. We bought coffee and stared at each other, the weight of the data we carried settling between us. We were no longer just a couple on holiday. We were sitting on a ticking time bomb of international consequence. The emotional toll was immediate and devastating. The memory of the small red lights watching us in the bedroom was no longer just an invasion of privacy. It was a prelude to something vast and sinister, and we had unwittingly entered a game we were not equipped to play. The biggest question was what to do with the data. Giving it to the police was impossible. Who would believe us? They would just see 2 frantic people with a laptop full of encrypted files and a crazy story about a secret bunker and a global surveillance operation. We would be dismissed, potentially institutionalized, or worse, quietly disappeared before we could talk. The files contained names of people with untouchable power. This was far beyond the jurisdiction of any local authority. The reflection was heavy and cold. The true horror was not the cameras, not the bunker, but the sheer scale of the deception. The coordinated effort to monitor the world from a place designed to look like a simple, isolated holiday rental was a masterpiece of paranoia and control. We had risked everything to turn off those cameras, and, in doing so, we had painted a massive target on our backs. We found a small, completely legitimate data recovery service in the next city and paid them an exorbitant amount in cash to upload the entire contents of the hard drives to an anonymous, heavily encrypted server located overseas. We also sent a single, heavily redacted copy of the files, along with an anonymous tip, to a well-known international investigative journalist organization, just to ensure that the story would not die with us. We left the city that very day, canceling our jobs, turning off our cell phones, and completely changing our identities. We knew the names on that list would be looking, and they would be looking hard. We never saw the cabin again, and we never spoke to Mr. Silas. We checked the news constantly, searching for any sign of a major blackout or a massive data leak, but so far nothing. The world appears normal, but I know the truth. I see that ordinary office building in my city on the news sometimes, and I shiver. We stopped the operation for a time, but for how long? We are living on the run, knowing that the person who built that bunker, the architect of Project Chimera, is still out there, and they know we took the data. The fear is a constant low thrumming under the surface of our new lives, a reminder that we are forever looking over our shoulders, wondering when they will find us. Subscribe for more shocking Reddit stories.